At the core of predictive BPM is a new way to model processes. This new method, which combines project management techniques with traditional BPM practices, is especially useful for complex multipath processes. In this example, we have created a definition for a simple customer feedback response process. As you can see, there are three major stages: reviewing the customer feedback, responding to it, and then notifying a store manager. Notice the timelines. The overall timeline of the process is built from the duration and dependencies of each activity. As you can see here, the response stage doesn't begin until the review feedback stage has concluded. I can click on the response stage and see that the activity on which it depends is highlighted in green, and that the activity that depends on it in turn is highlighted in red. Zooming in, we see that the second stage, labeled Respond, is actually comprised of three different sub-stages. The process may go through one, two, or all three of these stages, depending on what the reviewer indicates, as we'll see in a moment. These three stages share a timeline, meaning they can be run in parallel. So a person preparing an apology and another preparing a refund, for example, don't have to wait for one another to finish. But let's say we want the individual preparing the apology to be able to indicate in their communication that a refund is on the way. In that case, we'll want to make the send apology activity dependent on the send refund activity. We can change the definition to accomplish this process change by simply dragging the send apology activity onto the send refund activity, indicating a dependency relationship. Note that the timeline for the send apology activity has now moved out and does not begin until the send refund activity has completed. Now we're going to look at the system from the vantage point of the person responsible for the review feedback activity, Elmer Fudd. Elmer has an item on his incoming customer feedback queue. This may have been received via the mail, then scanned in. As soon as the scanned document appears on the system, it automatically kicks off the review process and appears in Elmer's task list. Elmer clicks on an item in his task list and is presented with the relevant form. As you can see, the customer's complaint is already attached to the document, and Elmer can select among three choices for how the complaint is to be handled. In this case, he determines that an apology, but not a refund, is called for, and goes ahead and submits the form. As you can see in the bottom pane, which displays the status of customer complaints that Elmer has previously worked on, this particular complaint is now in the hands of Mr. Coyote. Mr. Coyote is responsible for generating apology letters. Let's click on this item and see what we find. Selecting the Administration Timeline tab, we are again presented with our process definition. This time, though, the timeline reflects the actual running process instance. The bars show how far along each stage we are. Notice that Send Refund and Send Thank You show complete. We do not have to do anything in these activities based on Elmer's selection, so those steps are complete. The empty bar represents an activity that hasn't begun yet. The red triangles indicate the due date for each activity. Note that under current conditions, the process is expected to complete before its due date. However, let's imagine that Mr. Coyote is on vacation. Using Process Director, we could delegate his tasks to somebody else, but let's say we've decided instead to wait for him to return. We know that he won't be back until June 28th, so we decide to extend the anticipated duration of this activity until then. Note what happens. The process now extends beyond its due date. The progress bar for the Notify Retail Manager activity, the final activity, is red, letting the process owner know that, even though that activity hasn't yet begun, we already expect it to be late. If we, in turn, extend the due date by dragging the red triangle beyond the expected completion date, the process once again shows itself to be within deadline. In a complex, multipath, cross-functional process, that type of visibility is normally very hard to achieve. BP Logix is the first BPM provider to offer predictive capabilities included in the base configuration of Process Director.